Good evening, everyone. About to get this show started here shortly. We're going to be talking about winter maintenance for semi trucks. We're going to be talking about just a couple things you need to look out for just before this winter season really hits. Also, I want to share some insight on what we did on a job here in the shop. So let me know where you guys are watching from. I'm going to be answering some questions as well. We're going to get this show started here pretty shortly. A couple of things I'm going to be covering. I'm going to talk about battery maintenance, coolant system maintenance, tire maintenance, fuel system maintenance, air brake maintenance. Ask some questions. If you got some questions, make sure to hit us up in the chat. If you need any help with any kind of troubleshooting, if you got some issues, hit us up in the chat. Or if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, give us a shout, 972-225-3017. I'll make sure to put our information in the description. We're also going to be talking about oil changes, block heaters if needed, inspecting belts. We're also going to ask some questions. Chicagoland's in the house. What's going on? This from you probably already getting ready for winter up there. I know Chicago gets pretty cold up there. Down here in the south, we only get extreme cold weather for maybe two months out of the year. As I mentioned, I wanted to share some information, some photos, and what we found on an Injector Cup job on a D13. I know I went over a video on how that injector's set up, but I wanted to share some photos on that and some preventive maintenance tips on that as well. And we're going to talk about just the simple stuff like wipers, making sure your washer fluid's up, flashlight, just the bare essentials. If you don't know how to cook, figure it out. There's a lot of videos out there. Cook you a pack of steaks and throw it in the fridge if you're barely learning how to get on the road. The more independent you become, the more valuable you are. So if you got any questions or concerns, hit us up in the chat. We're going to get this show started here pretty shortly here. That's what I tell you we're going to talk about today, about getting your truck ready for winter. You don't want to get stuck up there in the cold. Yeah, we got some people in the house. They're pretty familiar with cold weather. I know you guys see some extreme cold weather up in the north. What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well today. Let me fix this chat here. Got a few on the board already. So I said we're going to be talking about winterizing your truck. So few things I want to cover. I want to get started with talking about the batteries. Now, batteries are really important. If you haven't changed your batteries in a really long time, I discussed this on Common Tools the other day, and if you haven't, let me turn this background music down a little bit. If you haven't had a chance to check your batteries, make sure to get them checked out, especially load tested. Now, I shared a load tester for 1,000 cranking amps. If you're running anything lower than 1,000 cranking amps, I would suggest upgrading your batteries. If you haven't changed your batteries in over a year, definitely change those batteries out. The batteries are very important. They pretty much turn the whole truck over to start it up. Since diesel engines they don't have a spark plug or any kind of igniter. They run off thermal combustion, which is pretty much heat. It needs that heat and that speed, that rapid speed to turn that truck over. Now, this is one I just pulled up here. I'm not saying, hey, go to Advanced Auto, but this is a load tester here. Make sure to get those batteries load tested really. I mean, if you haven't had them load tested in at least a year, make sure to get that load tested, because when winter hits, it really kills those batteries. I'm talking about just a real cold hit, a real cold weather just overnight. If you already have some weak batteries or some batteries that may be about, maybe 10, 11 months old, they haven't been checked in a really long time, and you actually get it in that first freeze or that first cold weather, it's gonna kill those batteries. It's gonna kill those batteries, and you're not gonna be able to start that truck up. That one freeze overnight is gonna take all the just all the energy that's saved up in that battery. So you can avoid this by getting them checked out early, getting them load tested early. If you haven't had them, if you haven't had your batteries inspected in over a year, get them checked out. So I know some of them are not that easy to access. You have to take off a fairing, and it's not really too easy to access. But schedule it in. This information I'm going to be sharing, schedule it in with your PM or something like that, so they can have definitely your batteries checked out. So this is things that we need to get done right before we actually start getting cold. If you're already up there in the cold weather, let me know what you're experiencing already. If you haven't been in the cold weather, it's not something to play with. If your truck doesn't start and it's super cold out there, it's it could be life and death when it comes to how cold actually it is out there. So another thing I'd like to discuss is your cooling system. Your cooling system, a lot of people kind of ignore their cooling system during the wintertime just because they feel like, oh, it's wintertime, I don't have to worry on during the heat time, it's making more pressure. But wintertime really puts a beating on the cooling system, especially when it comes to the coolant hoses and just all the rubber seals that are inside the cooling system. Any rubber seals that are getting cold and hot, really extremely cold and extremely hot, will cause them to brittle. And you can see them get a little bit toasted up. It looks like it's toasted, but they'll just become dry. So coolant leaks are very important as well. You might see coolant leaks during the winter time. So if I was a driver, stock some coolant. Make sure you have some coolant in stock on your truck. And I wouldn't necessarily say you would need some more batteries, but I would definitely make sure your batteries are checked. And if they haven't been replaced within a year, definitely get them changed out. If you're running like some 600 cranking amp batteries just to save some money, I would not do that. I would definitely go with at least 1,000 cranking amps, because as I mentioned, these diesel engines are rotating and creating thermal combustion, which is heat, and it needs to move very fast. If it doesn't have that quick start, you'll definitely kill those batteries. And since this cold weather is coming in, if your batteries are already weak, it's going to kill them out. It's going to just make those batteries go dead, super dead. All right, so on the cooling system as well, radiators. If we're getting into the cold season, if some of these older trucks have a shutoff valve for the heater lines that go to the heater core inside the cab. Now they put manual cutoff hoses or cutoff valves on there to keep coolant from going into the heater core during the hot season where it's not needed. So if you're starting to run that heater and you have shutoff valves, not just all older trucks, but some trucks have them, even newer trucks, just to kind of cut down. Be sure to, if you start that up, to don't jump on the road right away. Try to stay home close to a shop or close in the yard in the morning when you do turn those on, just in case that heater core starts to leak when you start running that hot water through there. If it's been shut off the whole time, that hot water running through that heater core goes into the cab. If you're not familiar how a heater works in a truck, it's just like a car. It's using the hot coolant and circulating it through a heater core inside the cab to create heat, and it's also going to the sleeper as well. So keep an eye on those hoses. Check up under the sleeper before you cut those on. If they have been cut off for a long time, check that heat to make sure it runs correctly. And don't leave the yard. Check it out. Look for cracks in the hoses, any leaks, any noticeable signs before it actually happens. So that's definitely something you want to look out for. The next topic is really important. It's going to be tires. Okay, I can't stress this enough. During the wintertime, you don't know when you may hit a bad situation. You can see in my background, this is everything looks dry. Not dry, but there's no ice on the road. Nothing's ice on the road. But sometimes if you hit that ice, or if you're going through parking lots that aren't treated and you have bad tires, and you get caught in the condition where heavy rain or anything like that, and you have some balding tires, you may have been able to get away with it during the hot summertime. The hot cement, you're getting still rubber on the ground. You don't have to worry too much about keeping control. But when this winter hits and you have some bad tires or a bad alignment, definitely get this checked out, because you start getting these hazardous road conditions with a bad alignment or some bad tires and you lose control, it's not going to be like a car where you can get that sucker back under control. It's going to be a lot tricky, especially when you have so much weight pushing you behind. Oh, we got a comment here. Appreciate you joining us. Says he just noticed my water pump leaking. Volvo 2015 D13. Can I get home 500 miles? How fast is it leaking? How fast is it leaking? Stack up enough water, stack up enough coolant. I would just go with a straight concentrate or the 50-50. I'm sorry, so that you don't have to add water. And depending on how heavy the leak is, if it's super heavy, it may shut off on you, which you won't be able to make it. If it does shut off on you, I do not advise. I've seen it before where drivers will bypass the coolant sensor or the low coolant pressure sensor. I'm sorry, this low coolant level sensor that's in the reservoir just to get by. That's really tricky because some trucks, that's really like their only resort to not overheating the truck, because it will shut off. The truck will shut off if it gets too hot. But in some cases, once it gets hot, it's not going to cool off right away. So damage could occur when you get into if you get these trucks too hot. And I've mentioned this time and time again about how more delicate these newer engines are, especially these modern engines that are cutting down on soot. They're taking more metal out of the heads. So if they do run low on coolant and you do get them hot, they're really susceptible to cracks. But appreciate you. You said let me move this chat box down here. Got chat in the house. What else he said there? Just in the morning, but after I'm engine running, it stops. Okay, if it's just in the morning. He says you got that coolant leak happening in the morning, but it stops after the engine warms up. As I mentioned, with that cold weather, those seals will shrink. The rubber will shrink and leaks start to happen. Also, coolant hoses will shrink. Leaks start to happen. And you said once it's warmed up, it stops leaking. And keep an eye on that coolant level, as I mentioned. And yeah, if you can make it, I would suggest you can make it home if it's not that heavy. But if it is heavy, I wouldn't risk it, because you don't want to overheat the truck. Appreciate that comment. So as I mentioned, tire treads, really important. Make sure you have, if you don't have a tire depth gauge, get you one. There's some on Amazon. You can just Google it search it on Amazon, get one ordered. Also, back to going to the coolant, make sure that your coolant is the mixture is just right, because you can buy some coolant strips, or just basically just some test strips to test your coolant. Don't test it while it's hot. If you do it in the morning, maybe in the morning when you get to the truck, you may need some pliers as well, because some of these test strips are really small. So you want to drop that test strip at the top of the reservoir and test your coolant level. Your coolant mixture. And what's going to happen is going to give you a readout on what's actually in the coolant. You have additives in the coolant. So right now, when it really gets cold, is really what antifreeze is used for. That's why it's called antifreeze. It actually doesn't supposed to freeze. So if the mixture is not right, you got too much water or not right enough mixture in there, it could freeze on you. And if it does freeze on you, it's definitely going to cause some problems. It can cause some pretty big damage. You're looking at radiators, anything like that. So be sure to check that out as well. Keep an eye on that. As we mentioned, the tire gauges, you can check your tire depth. Make sure you don't have any bald spots. Make sure you're looking on the inside of your tires as well, because some of that tread could be coming off on the inside of that tire, and you might not be able to see that. Fuel systems as well, you can use anti-gels. The only thing with anti-gels, just be careful with them. Make sure you read the instructions and you don't put too much in there. And you also want to drain the condensation out of your fuel filter housing. If you can drain the water out of the separator, if you're already doing that, do it just more often during the winter time, especially if you're going into, like now it's really cold in the evening, or in the morning it's really cold and it warms up in the afternoon, and then it's cold again at night. These are the times that cause tons of condensation. So make sure that you're draining that water separator, checking that fuel filter. If you haven't changed that fuel filter in more than 20,000 miles, wouldn't go that long. That's like the max, especially with these high pressure pump systems. I would go 15,000 miles on those fuel filters. If you go further and you're running a lot of water, if there's a lot of contamination in your fuels, it's gonna burn up that fuel pump really quick. So these are just other items to look out for, not just that cold weather can get to your cooling system. It also can get to your fuel system, and also your air brakes. Okay, so we talked about draining your air brakes. We've already discussed air dryer filters and changing out your air dryer filters yearly. Now, when we go about draining these tanks, if you don't have a drain valve that's working properly, schedule any. I know some of this stuff might be overwhelming, but just schedule it with your PM. You get a few things done on your PM. Make sure you're able to drain your air brakes or your air tanks, so that like I mentioned, this condensation is gonna start building up really quick, especially with the cold weather in the morning, and then the change of weather in the afternoon is definitely gonna start causing a lot of condensation. I appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. It looked like we lost chat for a second. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for a service, give us a call, 972-225-3017. We'll be more than happy to give you a hand. We do digital inspections. A lot of these things we check for you, and we'll give you we'll send you a text message, and it's all these pictures, everything that we find on your truck sent to your phone, so you can decide what you want to work on. But a lot of these things that I'm mentioning here is just regular inspections, automatic inspections that we conduct if you bring your truck to our shop. 972-225-3017. If you're own a truck, or if you're a fleet owner, check us out. Now, the next section I'm going to be discussing is the engine maintenance and preparing your engine. Okay, we talked about fuel filters. That's really important. Now, a lot of these different changes in temperature is also going to build condensation inside the engine as well. Now, the engine has a larger surface. A lot of stuff that's enclosed, but it's large surface on the inside. So the walls will build up. Condensation. So keep an eye on your oil levels. Make sure that you're doing your PMs. Don't go further. Now, in some cases, some trucks will run a thicker oil or a stronger oil weight, but a lot of these newer model trucks, you won't have to go with a different weight unless you're in like super extreme temperatures for a really long period of time. And these are the same things for block heaters as well. If you're not in like really, really icy conditions where it's like sub-zero for days at a time, in those cases, you don't even turn your truck off. If you're new to the trucking industry and you're about to get into the cold weather, I would suggest, if you haven't checked your batteries in a long time and all this stuff is questionable, do not turn your truck off, because you don't want those trucks to die on you in the cold weather. So in some areas we'll have block heaters, and block heaters are just keeping the engine warm, and it's basically just heating up the block. And as I mentioned, since we're dealing with a thermal combustion engine, it doesn't have an igniter. It's just using thermal combustion to create the power. So a block heater will keep that block nice and warm. So when you start it up, it just crank right up. Now, smaller diesel engines like the if you anything in a 350 or a small Duramax, they'll have a glow plug, or a plug that actually warms up the cylinder. It's a glow plug, but larger diesel engines do not run glow plugs. They used to run like an intake heater to warm up the intake coming in, but they no longer do that. And in some cases, you don't want to, like when DD15 first came out, a lot of people didn't want to work on a DD15. They were kind of worried about the DD15, because one of the things it was saying, especially with this high pressure fuel system, is they don't want you to use ether to start the truck up, because ether can damage these newer style injectors. So they suggest don't use it. I have seen people use it before. I wouldn't recommend using ether, especially if you're running a high pressure system. And the reason why I say that, because with block heaters or any kind of cylinder heaters or intake heaters, if you're using an igniter, ether, you can cause an intake explosion, and it can get really dangerous. But yeah, so we don't have, and so if you guys do use block heaters, let me know in the comments. Down here in the South, we usually don't use them as much unless we know we got a freeze coming. The next item I'd like to discuss is inspecting your belts and hoses. Now, we talked about hoses, but belts are really important. If they look like they're getting dry and it look like they're close to being broke, make sure to get that replaced. And when you do your pre-trip inspection, give them a look. If you're a technician and you're working on your fleet, or if you work for a fleet, take pride in your work. Look at those items. Check out those belts and see if they are worn. Just because they're coming in for a seal, I would definitely be checking those belts for you too. Check those belts. If they break on you, they can cause a bunch of problems. Okay, these belts are not like something I can just throw on yourself. Some of these belts are running far in there. You need some special tools to get to them. I'm not saying you can't change a belt. I understand a lot of you do-it-yourselfers can handle this stuff, but I'm telling you, some of these belts are double stacked on each other. They're going around the fan, and when they do break, they can tear up a lot of stuff. And a good thing is, whenever you get your belts inspected, if you haven't had your belts inspected in a really long time and you find some wore belts, you make sure to check the pulleys and the idlers. All those items, they're spinning for a really long time, especially if we're at that magic 500,000 mile halfway through the engine's life mark. We already know we got to get a lot of maintenance done around that time. So definitely get that checked out. Appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. We got this. Yeah, always inspect your truck. Definitely. That's always good. This is what it comes down to. Your two eyes inspecting everything. You're looking on the belts. You're looking for brittleness, any kind of wear in the belts. You can tell. You can see the belt, or the white part of the belt. It's like a fabric part on the belt start to show. Definitely get that changed. And even inspecting the pulleys, looking at the pulleys, you'll see them shining. The ones on the alternator, anything like that. We talked about batteries. If you haven't replaced alternator over 500,000 miles, those are things that you want to get checked out too. Whenever you go in for your PM, and tell them, hey, you know what, I want to check my electrical system. Winter's coming. I want to make sure all my batteries are tight, my starter tight, everything looks good. I want to test my alternator, make sure the condition is good. Alternators will last a really long time, but if you hit that, you're in a high mileage mark and they haven't been replaced, I wouldn't be surprised, or don't be surprised if those things need to be replaced. The next thing I want to discuss is injector cups. I want to move over to some images of the job that we just completed. Now, injector cups I've brought up a few times. This is something that's very common on a Volvo. Wintertime can trigger these faults as well. Wintertime can trigger any fuel leak faults or anything, any low power. I just released a short about understanding your truck. If you feel like you got low power and you got low power, make sure to get that truck checked out, because running that truck low power or any kind of warning signs letting you know that something's going on with that truck, pushing it any further is just going to cause more problems to the truck. It's not going to fix it any quicker. It's just going to cause more problems later on down the road. So be sure to get that checked out right away. Appreciate everyone that joined us today. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're looking for service, we're in the DFW area, 972-225-3017. We'll be more than happy to help you out. I'm going to move over to the share screen here, and I'm going to share with you some images of a injector cup job that we did, and everything came out well. But I just wanted to cover a few things. So if you don't recall us talking about injector cups, these are the types of tools that you use to replace the injector cups. And as you can see, it's a very tedious process. You want to make sure you have all the tools. Every truck's going to be different. Volvo is just something that we've been discussing here recently, but most diesel engines are going to have injector cups. Okay, this particular truck had a hard start, came in and ready to get it done. We tore it down. at the beginning of the test, we've talked about this before, how we do the air and fuel test. There was aerated fuel, so that's something that we had an issue with at the beginning. Here's an image of the cup actually installed here. Now I wanted to go over, let me see here. Here is a video of the actual cups removed. Here's an image of the new cup. Now it's not focused in, but down at the bottom here of the new cup is where the tip of the injector seals. Okay, so this is the old images of the old cups here. Now with Volvo, combustion gas will pass through the seal of the injector and the injector cup here at the bottom. I didn't let me do something real quick. Let me see here. Give my pointer a little bit of there we go. Okay, so here's the bottom of the injector here. You can see how smooth it is. Now this is a brand new injector. Now going through this, if we look at the injector, you can see this is, now the video is kind of small, kind of quick, but like you can see the difference in this injector here. Here, this cup is a little cleaner. You see how this one's clean? It's still showing. Let me open it more, if I can open it up more. Okay, you see this is where the bottom of the injector seals. This one looks like it was probably still sealed. If we go to the next cup, you can see the difference in the cup. You see that? The seal's gone. It's allowing combustion gas to pass through, and you can see all this mess. This is how you start getting aerated fuel inside the fuel system. Let's look at the next one. All right, I wish this is a little bit better, but we'll work with it. We work with it. All right, this one looks like it's still sealed, but it's not as clean as that first one. We look at this first one. You see how clean this one is? Doesn't look like combustion gas is getting into this cup. You can see how clean and clear it is. It doesn't look like it looks like it's just clean, like fresh. When you go to this one, you can see that one full of soot mixed with fuel. This one too, a bunch of soot mixed with fuel. Still had a seal. You can see the line here. You see the line here? This is where the injector tip seals. And this is the only thing that's sealing the injector from the combustion chamber. So you got to understand that combustion chamber, there's a lot going on in that combustion chamber. This is very high pressure, super high pressure in that combustion chamber. So any leakage, you can start to see this cup as well. You can see the wear pattern are not uniform as well. What ends up happening is when the seal's gone on the injector tip, the combustion gas starts to pass through the tip, and it also can move the injector. So what'll happen, it'll move the injector and it'll start waddling it out. So what Volvo does is they come out with a specific on, or outline on, and usable and non-usable injectors. Now, I understand not everyone can replace injectors. Injector kit, a whole injector set is not cheap. Anytime you remove a cup or replace an injector, you have to replace the cup. If you do a brand new injector from a faulty injector, you have to replace this cup. It will have issues sealing. That's what the procedures call for. So as you can see here, you can see the wear in this one. You see how it's a little more waddled out compared to the other ones. Let me get over here. Let's look at the other ones here. All right, now 1, 2. You can see how it's not uniform. It's a bit uniform, but it seems like it's a little bit more on this side of the cup. The wear is more on this side. This is giving us an indication that it's not an even wear. We're looking for even seal pattern. And everything should be uniform, but you can see the difference in these cups. You got some that are clean, or the only one, this one's semi-clean, but the first one was the cleanest. So we know that we had combustion gas passing through these injectors. Okay, the next step is checking the injectors. So that's the next thing I want to discuss, and then we'll move on to some more of this winterizing. But this was just something I wanted to cover because we've been discussing this pretty often. All right, so here's an image of the injectors installed. Here's your injectors. And it's still quite a bit of work. This is your rocker arm assembly up top. What they're doing here is just stowing it back, pulling it back. Since there's Jake brakes, which holds the exhaust valves from opening or closing all the way to cause an engine brake. You have to keep these in line or together. The cam is over here, still under here. But as you can see, it's a time-consuming job. The doghouse, the inside of this area of the truck needs to be removed so you have access to the back. This is a very time-consuming job. You'll want to take your time. And so when we look at the injectors, now we're going to look at the tips of the injectors, and then we'll move on. Okay, so this is the number one cup, because you can see how the wear is still decent, kind of uniform. But if we follow the specifics are going to say they want an even wear across the lip and nothing that's not uniform. Anything above here, they're considering that it's not sealing properly, and they would call it a non-reusable injector. Now, once we go and start inspecting more tips, they kind of start matching these cups. The cup wear, as we showed you earlier, the cup wear starts to match these types of tip wear. Now, all this is going to do is get worse over time because, as I mentioned, this is combustion gas that's passing through. So it's rocking that tip of the injector. So when it rocks that tip of the injector, it's rocking it in that worn cup, and just more and more over time, just causing it to bore out like that. So Volvo suggests they don't want anything too close to this bottom of this injector here. And you can see the uniform. You see this difference? Look at this. Now, in this particular job, the customer could not do all injectors, and I understand. We don't want to. It's very 4 injectors is not a cheap job, or a cheap period. So, in this case, if it's reusable, we wouldn't be able to guarantee that it's not going to seal. And I'll show you the video at the end. Let me see. Let me pull it up real quick. Not this video. I already showed you that one. This video here, I'll have to dig the first video, but this video is after the job, and this is why we suggest brand new injectors, because okay, so the aerated is cut down a lot. It's the aeration before this was very, very, I mean, you couldn't even see through it. But you see how the aeration is a lot cleaner, but they're still there. Is because reusing injectors kind of like this is going to not let you get a complete seal on that. But we understand the situations where the injectors are too high, and not replacing them is going to be very pricey. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what to look for. If you do have cups and they've been going bad for a while, then I would recommend doing the injectors as well, just so you can get a solid seal. Now, the injectors will eventually be replaced, but we would have to redo cups again. But this is kind of why I just wanted to share with you on this particular job. And when you're redoing these injectors, or when you're doing these injector cups, these are the things you need to look out for. So what can you do as the preventive maintenance to this is checking that coolant. As I mentioned, buying you some coolant strips and getting that coolant, testing that coolant, and make sure all your levels are correct. That's going to help you. And also, we talked about draining the fuel system, or draining the water out of it. Do that more often. If you don't do that at all, if you haven't done that at all, make sure to be doing that during the change of this season here. So let me know what you guys depend on during the winter time. Got a guy here, Tracy Jones. Thanks for joining us this evening. Make sure to hit that like button. He says, every time I change the fuel filters on a DD15, it's hard to start. Why is that? Now, it's because it's a high pressure system, and when you're gonna need to prime the system, and not all the time will the priming pump that's made on the fuel filter housing work. So it's recommended to use an actual fuel primer, which puts filtered fuel into the system and primes it for you. But you got to ensure that you're putting enough in there, or enough pressure going in there, and you're not pumping air in there. Okay, because I've done a video about a no start, and I've seen some of the do-it-yourselfers. Now the no start video that I have out there was when Detroit was recommending that particular tool. Now it's been updated since. Now they're saying don't use that tool. Now we use a fuel priming. Let me pull it up for you. And what this fuel priming tool does, it's battery operated, it's filtered fuel, and it ensures that you're not entering any air into the system, because one of the reasons why they stopped using that hand primer pump, the one that looked like the fire extinguisher in the video that I did, one of the reasons why Detroit stopped recommending that is because there's no indicator on the priming tool that you're pumping air into the system. So if all you're doing is just pumping it by hand and then connecting it and turning it on, you don't know how much fuel, or if you're even pumping fuel in there. And if you're pumping air in there, then you can create damaged injectors, because these particular injectors are really, really sensitive for some reason. So if they're not primed correctly and they experience that combustion, and they try to open up and it's nothing but air opens up, it can internally damage these injectors. We see it a lot, and it ends up becoming to a no start condition, a completely no start condition, where you have to replace the injectors, all of them, just to get the truck started. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to give you real scenarios that happen. It gets to, if you don't prime the system correctly, especially after an oil change or fuel filter change, and you crank that truck up, you're cranking that truck up, and they're pumping air to that system, you'll damage the injectors, and it's going to be a no start, having to replace all injectors just because that's how they were made. They're not like the Series 60 where they put a beating on them. You can put a beating on them and nothing happens. It's not like that. Appreciate everyone that's joined us. Good question. Thank you for sharing us. Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. I hope I was able to answer your question. If you're doing your own fuel filter changes, I would recommend getting the right tools. If not, just using a trustworthy shop that knows what they're doing and getting that fuel filter replaced. Because not only that, they're going to be able to throw the waste away as well, instead of just throwing the fuel on the ground. So he says, we have a hard priming pump. What's the new tool? Your hand priming pump. What's the new tool? I need it. Let me get that priming tool pump. Let me see. Priming tool. This one, it's not going to be for an everyday. Now, the DD15. Okay, so this one here is the one I was using in the video. I don't know what that was. Here we go. Now, I don't know where this place is from. This is something I just pulled up. But this is the priming tool that I was telling you about that you got to be cautious with, because Detroit doesn't recommend this anymore. But if it's for somebody that just needs to start their own truck at times, you can use this. But one thing you want to do is ensure this thing's got fuel in it, because I'm gonna warn you right now. If you don't have this thing full of fuel and you pump air into your system, you're gonna make a bad situation worse. You're gonna cause a no start situation to a complete no start situation where you're gonna end up replacing injectors. So FYI, for your information, let me tell you the ones that we use if you run a shop. We don't use this one no more, guys. This is just somebody, this is in my other video. Let me see if you can even find it, because we special order these. I'd have to look it up. It's probably not something. It's not probably not something you probably want to invest in, but we use it to transfer fuel. If we have a contaminated fuel system, that's something that we use it for. But what it is, it's an electric pump, and it runs it through a filtering system, and you're supplied constant. You can put the input line right into the tank, so you're using the fuel from the truck, and it's filtering it out and then going in, so you're not bypassing the filter. And it also has a sight glass on it, so that you can actually see and make sure that you're pumping fuel into the system whenever you're priming it. Now, the reason why this is so useful, that sight glass, is because you want to make sure, like I mentioned earlier with the hand tool, that if you pump air into the system, you're going to damage the injectors, and you're going to have problems, big problems. And that's not what you want. You don't want to have a semi no start situation into a big no start situation. Appreciate everyone that's joined us today. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. You got to pump the hand primer to get as much air out as possible. Yeah, Hector, appreciate you sharing that. And the hand pump is there, but it's not always gonna work. And over time they start to wear, and those hand pumps can be a pain in the butt. So they can work, but if you're going to do it more often, invest in a tool to prime the system. The hand pump is really not even recommended to prime the system anymore, to be honest with you. For the same reason, it's the same reason that if the seals go bad on that hand primer and it's not working properly, and you're pumping, so what you can possibly do is pump air to the system. Those pumps do go bad. Those hand pumps do go bad. So that's kind of why hand pump causing the problem. See, here we go. The hand pump could be causing the problem. That's what I mean. That's why we don't use the hand pumps to start the prime the fuel system, because even not only just with this truck, I mean, they've been using hand fuel primers on fuel systems. Caterpillars, I remember those used to give us a headache, and they used to leak fuel. They used to have one on top of the fuel filter housing, and it would once it's out, it's out. Like it would be so hard to pump, and people would still depend on it. They would stand on those things. Caterpillar made them really strong. You could stand on those suckers sometimes. People would try to pump them, but what you don't understand is it's a pump. It uses seals, and those seals go bad. Like we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, with the different climate changes, the different heat, and changing out the seals on the hand primer is not like maintenance. It's not like something you're going to be changing all the time. So we don't know if you're over 500,000 miles and you're dealing with the hand primer pump. Yeah, it could be causing some problems. So I'm just kind of giving you what we've seen. So appreciate that, though. Appreciate that feedback. Appreciate everybody that's joined us. So if you got any problems with your truck, make sure to give us a shout, 972-225-3017. I hope you were able to get something from the broadcast. This is what we're here for. We talked about the injector cups. We talked about getting ready for winter. I really dove into the injector cups because we really get excited about those type of jobs and getting the customer taken care of. We really would have liked to replace the injectors, but we understand everyone's situation. So, but if you have the similar problems like that, a hard start or anything like that, fuel related, we can help you out. We have all the modern tools. We can get you up and going pretty quick. 972-225-3017. Make sure to give us a shout. So now the last thing I want to talk about, well, before we wrap it up, one of the easier things is going to be like wipers and wiper fluid. Now, don't overlook these. And if you're new to this industry and you haven't been caught driving with some bad wipers, man, trust me, you don't want to be in that situation, because driving blind is very dangerous. So invest in getting the right washer fluid, the good washer fluid, the good wipers, because when it really gets down to storming and all this rain and all this gunk on the road and all this, if you see all this in the back, how we have all this wet roads that are going to be treated, it's going to just get all on your windshield. You can see how this windshield here is full of ice. So a lot of times, or snow, a lot of times that snow would tear up your wipers. So make sure to get those wipers checked out often. Hit us up in chat. Let me know what you like about wintertime. I know that some drivers won't even go further up north because of, I recall when we were moving trucks, that one of the drivers did not want to go north of, let me see what highway that was. North of what is it? It's one that runs all the way across the United States. I think it's 40. Yeah, 40. So some people don't even like traveling north of 40 because of that 40 runs through the middle of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and up Tennessee. So some drivers, they won't even travel up 40, north of 40, because of the weather. That's a warning. So it's coming. The cold weather is coming. Be prepared. If you haven't been caught in this cold weather before, make sure to watch this video again. Make sure to check your batteries. We talked about washer fluid. Emergency kits will be flashlights, blankets, anything in case you do have, if you're in a situation where you can't start your truck. There are some jumper boxes, but the ones that can actually jump a truck are not going to be, they're going to be up in $1,000 range. So if that's something you want to look into and purchase so that you can have, if not, like I mentioned, check those batteries. Also, this is something that come up as well. Somebody shared this with us, and it was make sure to use like WD-40 and spray the door hinges and door locks and your door where you actually, if you're still using a key to open and close your door, spray in there as well. Spray your hinges, spray your door jambs, because when it does get cold, if those places aren't lubricated good, then you might not be able to open up your truck. And I'm not trying to scare you guys. I'm just trying to get you all informed so you'll be ready for the winter time. If you're looking for service, make sure to give us a shout. 972-225-3017. If you guys got any more questions, make sure to hit us up in the chat. Got some more videos coming your way. So we talked about winterizing and getting everything ready for winter. We talked about a few things here. We talked about battery maintenance. We talked about the cooling system. We talked about tires. One thing I would like to mention, make sure if you're going to be traveling in areas where there is snow happening, be sure to look it up and ensure that you have snow chains, because I know in some areas you have to have snow chains. They won't let you drive around that area without snow chains. So be sure to be prepared wherever you're going. Look ahead. Make sure you're not under preparing and having everything in place. It's better to be over prepared. Check those batteries. We talked about batteries. The fuel system as well. We talked about the fuel system. We talked about the air brakes. We had somebody mention about the hand pump earlier. Appreciate that question earlier. So if you are using that hand pump, be careful. Just use a shop. Be easier. Keep up with your oil changes. If you're going up in the cold and you're not used to it, don't mess with it. If you're going to need block heaters and you don't have experience with that, definitely get with someone that has experience. In a cold situation, it can be a life or death situation, because it can get cold out there and not everybody can be able to reach you in some of these places. So be sure to be ready. Inspect your belts. We talked about belts. We talked about hoses. We talked about that injector cup job. What else do we got? One thing I wanted to share with you guys before we get close to wrapping this up. I know some of the viewers, or a lot of the viewers, are really big on these on deletes, which I don't recommend because they're just not a solid one out there, and they're illegal, and so it makes it even more complicated for them to be a solid tune. So I wanted to share with you, just recently we had a truck come in and he was complaining of low power, and I want to share with you these two, because he came in and you right away, we do ask, but not all the time will the driver would be truthful, or maybe they don't know, maybe they honestly don't know, but we will ask if the truck has been tampered with or deleted. So this one they said it wasn't deleted, but later on we found out it was. We only received it because we didn't know it was deleted, but we didn't work on it. We just ran our test, and that's when we found out it was deleted. But this is another example of why we don't recommend deletes. Okay, so here is a compression test. Look at this cylinder number 6, 33%. This is pretty much an engine that's going to need to be opened up, probably going to be a head, or it's either going to be a burnt valve or a scuff liner, and it happens from overfueling and overheating the cylinder. When the cylinder overheats by adding too much fuel, the metal expands. When the metal expands, it expands out of its specification, out of what it's designed for, and it starts scraping up cylinder walls, the liners, the ring starts scraping it up, or you can have some issues with the valve. The cylinder, it's already creating a lot of power. These cylinders are. So whenever you do a tune that's not right, and it increases the power by increasing more fuel into this, it creates a really hot cylinder. And it may work for a month, it may work for 2 months, it may work for a year, but this is what we see happen with hack deletes. This is why a lot of my videos talk about staying away from these deletes. Honestly, it's gonna be best to run just straight stock, keeping your maintenance, following OEM, and run it stock. I wouldn't try to do aftermarket this, aftermarket that, because once you start dealing, I've dealt with a lot of cars growing up. I dealt with a lot of performance cars growing up, and what I've learned from performance cars, and it's the same with diesel. When you start modifying stuff to make more power, and you start creating performance, and you start modifying out of OEM, you're causing more work. You're going to end up working on it even more. Every time we modified a vehicle to create more power, we end up having to do more work to it. So be cautious when you're dealing with modifications. This is the type of stuff that happens. These engines they're not designed to be powerhouses, and they're designed to run efficient and run efficient for a long time. That means drive for a long period of time on the highway, consistently burning not much fuel and still able to haul that load, not haul ass down the straightaway. And these are not drag cars. They're not drag trucks. These are working machines that need to pull loads across a long distance. So you want to run them. You want them running efficiently. This is why they come with turbos. Turbo is the most efficient way. All this exhaust pressure is just creating more pressure to circulate back into the engine. That's why that truck is able just to keep running so smoothly like that. But yeah, after treatment systems will cause you a little bit more maintenance. Keeping up with your maintenance, looking into all that and following that, changing out that filter at 400,000 miles, doing your DEF filter at 150,000 and once a year, changing out your air dryer filter as well. Not over idling, and just making sure you're operating this truck within its specifications. There's going to be no need to do a delete or modification, because this is what happens. We see this often. Low cylinder pressure. Customer doesn't want to open up. And when we found out that it was deleted, unfortunately, we have to turn trucks down that are deleted. And it's not that we're against. It's not that we're against your decision. It's just that it's tough for us to troubleshoot these correctly when a lot of these a lot of the information in the computers have been removed. There's modifications that have been done. Now they're getting more strict with these types of modifications. They're even going after shops that are working on these modified trucks. So it's just too much trouble. It's too much trouble. So these trucks are designed to run non-modded out. They're all stock. If you want a project truck, do something else. Don't do that to these machines, because they're built to work. So be careful. Be very careful when you're dealing with these types of tunes. I appreciate everyone that joined us this afternoon, or actually this evening. It's already 7 p.m. Last time we went live was in the morning. Appreciate everyone that joined us. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Let us know what's working for you for winter. If you got any problems with your truck and you're in the DFW area, give us a shout, 972-225-3017. We'll be more than happy to help you out. We're located off of Interstate 20 and Bonneview Road, just south of Bonneview Road. Give us a call. Look us up online. I'll make sure to put our information in the details. Everyone that's joined us and hit comments to this evening, thank you very much. If you're watching this later on, make sure to let me know where you're watching from and what works for you during the wintertime, what you like to carry during the wintertime. I know I opened up about you guys learning how to cook too. Man, that's a game changer if you learn how to cook. It's really easy. If you don't know how to cook, then learn, man. That's one of the main things. If you already know how to drive a truck, learn how to cook is going to be simple. And men are built to cook, man. We once you start getting into it, you're going to want to start throwing some flavor into it. So try to eat, be healthy out there as well, guys. If you're on the road, get some exercise in. Do some fasting and some jump rope. If you're struggling with weight and you're dealing with a lot of fast food, try some fasting. Fasting is really good for you. And do some jump rope. I know you don't have a lot of space to work out or anything like that, but a jump rope, man, jump rope burns tons of calories. Get your heart rate up and going. What's good about get your heart, and I don't mean to go on about health, but I want to just bring this up. What's good about bringing that heart rate up often, and you can get like one of those health monitoring watches. You don't have to wear it all the time, but just when you work out, you can monitor your heart. But what's good about bringing that heart up, you're running that blood pressure up high, and you're cleaning out pushing all that blood through all the veins. So what ends up, it just keeps it clean. It's kind of like plumbing it all out, keeping that blood nice and flowing. Because if it's not flowing for a long period of time, that's whenever you can have problems. But that's all. That's on the little health things I wanted to share with you guys. Be safe out there. Make sure you have everything stacked up. If we're talking about food and you're getting in cold areas, get some stuff that you can cook easily. Some rice. If you like beans, mess with some beans. If you get some steaks, you can get a whole pack of steaks and cook them all at once, and then put them in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days, and make your own Chipotle bowls with some white rice or something. You know, you can do it. You can do it yourself. Be safe out there. Cooking's going to be a key. Hope you guys learned something from today's broadcast. Be sure to get ready for this wintertime, especially with those batteries. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.